Hello. All right. Hello, good afternoon, and hello, parents. How are you all today? And thank you for joining in today on this webinar arranged by ItsHerWay, It's a Skill. Thank you, Armin, for this opportunity. And for all the parents who are here, we're going to be talking about some tips on how to consciously parent. So let me begin by asking you, or rather telling you that we know that one of the most toughest and the most daunting job in the world today is that of being a parent. The good thing is that you're not alone because every parent feels the pressure and every parent has internally got a fear and a nagging worry that are they doing the right thing for their child? Because we as parents tend to protect our children against the difficulties of life. We try to shield them against the hardships and the challenges that they would face in their growing environment. Now, the question is, should we shield them from the difficulties and try to be the emotional cushion in their life? Or do we prepare them for it? How do we strengthen them to face their fears and overcome the challenges? How can we teach them to be emotionally resilient so that they can brave through whatever life situation demands of them? Children look up to their parents to support and guide them in their journey and help them to conquer their fears and get over their self-imposed limitations. So we as parents, we need to be very careful in fulfilling our responsibilities as a parent because we're not only nurturing a child, we are raising a future. And in a way, society has led us to believe that imparting good education is most important for building a successful life for our children. Now, good education definitely is important, yes. However, more important than education is good emotional intelligence and resilience. And that is the key for future happiness for our kids. So the question is, the next one is, how do we inculcate these in them? And this is what I'm going to touch upon today. And what I believe is that we need to work at three levels. Anything that we are working needs to be worked on three levels. Through conscious awareness, the second is by subconscious alteration, and the third level is we also need to work at the level of the energy, our body energy, through energetic attunement. So what we're going to be discussing today is the conscious awareness and how to be a conscious parent. And at the end of it, I'm also very briefly going to touch upon the subconscious element of parenting. So let's just begin with a very, very small exercise. Yeah, I want all of you to just close your eyes very briefly. Just take a minute to do this. So close your eyes and go back to your childhood. Go back to the memory of your childhood. And in truth, ask yourself, do you wish your parents understood your deepest desires, your fears, your insecurities? Do you wish they accepted you for who you were, as you were, with your failures and shortcomings and everything? Did they force on you the expectations of how you're supposed to be? And did they pass on their beliefs and patterns to you? Do you believe that life would have been different if they had raised you differently, said things that you wanted to hear, didn't say or do things that you didn't want to hear or felt hurting and bruising? So just take a moment and see in your mind's eye, how would life be different if they loved you unconditionally, no matter what? So I'm sure many of you feel that life would have been different. You would have been different if your parents loved you the way you wanted to be loved. I know I wanted my parents to show up differently when I was growing up. And there is this inner child in all of us that still desires to go back to our childhood and change things with our parents. Because we understand that being a parent isn't easy. We know that. And so let's discuss today on some ways that we can show up authentically to our kids as they want us to be. So what I'm going to do here is going to be talking about some myths some shifts that we need to make, and some skills that we need to learn as parents. So let's first begin with uncovering or debunking some myths, right? The first one is that parenting is all about the child. Now, my question to you is, why did you become a parent? What was your vision for becoming a parent? What fantasies did you have about how you would be as a parent? And what was your idea of having a perfect child? I'm sure each one of us who is a parent, we have these little thoughts and ideas before we became a parent. So then, is parenting really about the child? It really is not. It's more about us because it was our ideas and our fantasies and our vision about we would do this and we would do that with our kids. So only when we shatter this myth, things will begin to shift. We can begin to notice the many ways in which we are actually parenting our kids very, very unconsciously. And the reason for wanting a child actually comes from our own inner desires and needs. Acknowledging the fact that we have kids to satisfy our desires, our own agendas, is the first step towards creating accountability. Because conscious parents are brave enough to look at themselves and see the truth staring back without hiding or running away from it. And taking this first step isn't easy. It takes a lot of courage to accept the fact that parenting is less about the child and more about us, more about our needs and desires. And once we become aware of this, we will start to begin to watch our actions, and that is when shifts will start to happen. So the first myth is that parenting is about the child. No, it isn't. It's more about the parent. The second myth is that good parenting comes naturally to us. And this is because conception and birthing happens so naturally. We tend to assume that our instincts will kick in when we have a child, that we will know exactly what to do and how best to raise them. And then when we see that isn't quite happening that way, and no matter how much we try to become good parents, something seems to be going wrong, something seems to be going amiss. Our kids, are not turning out the angelic figures we imagine them to be, but sometimes they behave a little oddly. Sometimes, they get into these tantrums and we just can't seem to tame or bring them to rest. The idea of being a natural parent is the reason for our guilt and also our fears. Am I being a good parent? What should I do? What must I do to be a great parent? What if I'm doing something wrong here? So all these, we're bombarded by these kind of questions all the time, and this also makes us anxious. So really, we need to release the notion that we should just know what to do. Parenting, just like any other skill, also has to be learned. And this learning is not only with your first child, it actually needs to be cultivated with every child because each child is unique, each child is different. And so we need to respond differently with each of them. What works for one may or may not work with the other. Even twins we know who are born a minute apart can be very, very different from each other. So what we need to do is embrace a new paradigm that to parent consciously, we need to cultivate a daily and moment to moment awareness. Parenting is really a continuous and ever evolving journey where every little moment matters. And so rather than becoming a good parent, what we need to do is try and strive to become a conscious parent. So what exactly is becoming a conscious parent? Conscious parenting is born from the idea, the decision that we make to evolve first as a person and then as a parent. So it's more about us. It's more about transforming us. Then then we can pass that on to us as to our children. Because we understand that yelling at kids isn't good. And yet all parents, we are guilty of yelling at our kids at some point or the other. We know that we know these things, but practicing is quite something else. And that requires a moment to moment awareness of being present with our children. What is my tone? How is my body language? What is my energy saying at the non physical level to my child? And for that to happen, we first need to heal our inner wounds. We need to release our past pains and traumas, loving our inner child before we can be present as good parents to this soul who is entrusted upon us to raise him or her as best as we can. So now coming on to the myth number 3. What is that one thing that we want? In fact, every parent wants for their child. And every parent here, and this is, this is unanimous, every parent wants their child to be happy and successful. And this is by far the biggest myth of parenting, that of raising, that we need to raise a successful and a happy child. And you may ask that what is wrong in wanting happiness and success for our kids? In fact, that's all, that's what we are all striving for, isn't it? All the studies, the academics, the classes, the discipline is so that they can be happy and successful in life, isn't it? Well, when we say that it is our desire to see our kids happy and successful, it is actually this desire that messes up things for our children and also ourselves. These terms that we know, that success and happiness, are very subjective and so misunderstood that in our quest for chasing them, we sometimes do more harm than good. It is actually this chase that forms the root cause for so much stress and anxiety that we feel that, unknowingly we even burden our kids with it too. And success, we know, cannot be defined in a narrow matrix, because success could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And for a lot of us, success means that they should win and they should become rich, and it means achievement, it means wealth. And that is the definition of success for most. But the point here is, do we really want to teach our children that in order to feel worthy and happy, they need to have all the medals and trophies and high paying jobs? Do we really, really want to teach them that without having these, they are worth nothing? And then what about happiness? Again, happiness for one could mean unhappiness for another. We want us and our kids to be happy, happy all the time. We don't want pain and suffering for ourselves and our family. And in truth, what we really, really want is a life of non-pain for us and our kids. And then again, we know that the idea of life being non-pain is really an illusion, in this aspiration uh, for wanting a life of all happy. Is it even possible? Because we know that life is full of ups and downs. There are going to be moments that are sad. There are going to be moments that are not all happy. It is unavoidable. All of life is worthy, and not just the happy, happy moments. All of life with all of its thrills and flaws, and we should actually allow our children to experience the present moment fully. Instead of wishing happiness for them, we should prepare them for life, to make them ready for whatever life has to present to them. And this desire for happiness, not accepting things for as they are, this is what sets up resistance. And this resistance is what creates suffering for everybody. The conscious parenting is all about deconstructing the ideas of happiness and success. And you may say, what if all the others are doing it? All the other parents are doing so much by sending their kids to these classes and that classes. So how can we be left out of all of this? And this is what really you need to make a conscious decision, that it's okay to leave the competition to others. You can choose to opt out of the rat race, just to be comfortable and to experience life, and to let your child experience life with all its joys and ups and downs. So now coming to myth number 4, and this again is a big one, that parents need to be in control. We as parents believe that we need to have control over our kids and decide all that they need to do. Well, that is the old traditional way of thinking and parenting. It is a notion that we need to break free of. This desire to control our children is often coming from our own deep trauma of being controlled as a child. And so we think nothing of, taking away the choice of freedom from another. And this control drama is constructed over decades of feeling deep inner helplessness, of being robbed of our own freedom. And sometimes it is also rooted in our desire to see our kids as being super achievers. And then when we think that way, again, it becomes more about us and not really what it is that they want, and seeing them in their true essence of what they are. So just think and reflect for a moment as to what is your fear or pain underneath this desire for control. What would it mean if you just had to give up control? How would that make you feel? Also, when we are controlling them, giving them directions every time, they grow up not trusting their own selves. and always looking out for external direction and validation to lead their life. So we need to shift this energy from controlling to being a friend and being a guide to them. Because a guide would empower children to make conscious choices for themselves. Because there's a difference here between being a caregiver and being a commander of their destiny. So let them have the final say in shaping their life as they want it to be. Now, myth number 5 is about good children and bad children. Culture again has ingrained us with set, set expectations around what good and bad children are. So these are nothing but labels that we've given our children. And we do this constantly. We impose children on our children a lot of labels, and we don't even realize it at times. It is so ingrained in us. The definition of a good child and that of a bad child. We reward the good child and we punish the bad one. So good children we would define as the ones who are obedient, who do not throw tantrums, who do not answer back, the ones who follow rules and discipline, those who study and who would do as parents say. And good children also make us feel good and amazing and competent as parents. Bad kids, on the other hand, would be the troublemakers, the naughty ones. In contrast, the one who dares to question our authority, who dares to have their own opinions, the one who is defiant probably, or the one who doesn't follow rules, who would be loud and distracted. Uh, the bad child is the one we find difficult to control, and he or she would not do as we say. So children who do not follow rules, who challenge us, make us feel very, very angered and frustrated. We judge them, and we feel it is our right to punish them and to tame them. Maybe they're just individuals who have very strong wills, who refuse to follow our opinions and our way of thinking. And these labels that we give our children, it deeply, deeply colors our relationship with them. And the other thing is that when we put labels on our children, we are actually limiting their infinite potential. So there are labels like, lazy, fat, shy, pretty, ugly, studious, naughty. He's being so naughty. He's a terror in the house. He's very lazy. He doesn't like to do this. So we're kind of labeling them and we're limiting in a way because we understand that we as beings, we've got infinite potential. So let's not restrict it by putting labels on them and just belittling them and shaming them and judging them. It doesn't do any good to their self-worth also. And just looking at a deeper perspective of this, our children's behaviors are actually inviting us to look deeper to what their needs are. It is their need to be seen and their need to be heard. Are we really worthy and do we really matter? So just remember, just going back to your own childhood, just see how it felt to be the good child or the bad child. Maybe the good child is tired of being the good kid. Maybe the good kid wants to do something differently, but just because he's been labeled as the good kid, he cannot express himself or he cannot do things which he really, really wants to do. He cannot express himself fully over here. So let go of the label. Now, myth number 6 is children are an extension of our lineage. Now, this again is a great myth because here the lineage would include family customs, the traditions, the religions, the rules, and sometimes kids either don't agree with them or they want to make their own decisions about what to believe and what to follow. And this sometimes becomes a reason for a clash between the parents, especially the teenagers. And here again, it is the fear of the society, about the society pressure, the fear of being outcast and alienated and talked about in the social circle. What will they say? How are they going to react? And it's our need to belong, to feel the sense of security that the community has to offer, that we are okay to let our kids not express themselves and make the choices that truly, truly matter to them, just because we are so scared of what will happen if we support them and go against the mainstream. The point here is that the more the parent fails to recognize the child for their true being, their essence, the greater will be the split and the disconnection between the parents and the child. So these were the 6 myths that we discussed. And now coming to the parenting shift, what are the kind of shifts that you need to make in your thinking that will, create a greater connection between you and your child. The first shift is releasing the patterns we've inherited. So we just spoke about, the cultural archetypes and the things that we've inherited. So when we understand how our past influences our present, we will be able to identify these patterns and how we interact with our own kids. Um, the relationship between a parent and a child is actually the first prototype of all relationships. Every child wishes to be seen, validated, and loved unconditionally by their parents, who's the primary caretaker for a child. So, children learn from their parents, and parents are the primary influencers in a child's life. We learn our language, we learn our food habits, we learn our culture, and a lot of other things from our parents. And also in our blueprint, which we subconsciously or unconsciously download, is the way to parent, which is being passed on to us on how, based on how we were parented. It comes from not only our parents, but it also comes from generation to generation, because our parents were also parented in a certain way by their parents. So the first step is understanding the patterns that we've inherited, and understanding that it doesn't belong to any one particular person. It's been passed down from generations to generations. And conscious parenting, again, is about breaking these generational patterns. We need to unlearn the patterns. And only when we do that, we will have the ultimate freedom to choose the new way that would ultimately define our relationship with our kids. And unless we become aware of this, we're going to be bound to repeat these patterns over and over again. And part of this awareness process is to release our own parents from the expectations we had from them. And only through this persistent awareness, we can stop unconsciously passing down these parents and our own emotional baggages onto our children. We need to break the chain here. So shift number 2 would be letting go of the cultural archetypes. Now, what are cultural archetypes? Cultural archetypes refer to the experiences shared by our race or our culture. They are the unwritten rules for how a society operates, or the way things are supposed to be, a checklist that needs to be followed. So it could be rules on love, it could be rules on religion, rules on death, birth, marriage, beauty, sexuality, all these kinds. And these experiences exist in the subconscious of every individual. It's ingrained into us right from a very, very young age. For example, it is expected that a girl should be married by the age of 25, 26, and that once married, a couple must have a child to complete the family. Another example can be that a successful running family business naturally expects the son to join the family business. Even though the child probably may be deeply interested in something else, in fine arts, or probably wants to travel the world, which would take him away from the home and business. And what really happens when the child is made to give up his joy, his passion, his expression of its true self, that's when resentment, stress, anxiety, depression, health issues, they all crop in. And people would usually attribute it to the work pressure, when it actually is the feeling of joy that has been, taken away in the form of these rules. So these cultural archetypes about our daily living can plant seeds of disconnection with our children. The more we attach the shoulds that are ingrained in us by the society, the more we suffer, and in turn make our kids suffer too. So it's time then to let go of these. And as you release these patterns that culture has put onto us, you will begin to feel a lot lighter, more connected to your child, because you will now see them as an individual, a person who is free to born, free to do things about what his chosen purposes, and not as what is defined by the cultural norms. Then going forward, shift number 3 is we need to transform the fear into courage. Now, there are a lot of occasions when your heart probably is filled with fear and concern for your child, but instead of expressing it in the form of love and care, we sometimes overreact with anger and fury. Yeah. And beneath this strong reaction, so sometimes we have these, outbursts when we don't really mean it. We have something else within us, we express it in the form of an emotional outburst or an angry outburst. And what really lies beneath is fear. And fear, we know, is one of our basic primary emotions. Our brains are wired to feel the fear. So we want safety, we want happiness, we want success for our kids. And what we fear is the outcomes if things go wrong, if things go otherwise. And most of our fears are geared to the potential threat, the fear of the unknown. We really don't know what's going to happen in the future. So most of our fears are linked to that. And then what happens is that our children don't experience our love, but instead they feel our anger and the rejection from us. And besides creating a disconnection, a fearful parent can also lead to shaping a fearful child because our kids pick up these emotions from us. So then how do we overcome these fears? We fear because we are afraid of the discomfort of the unknown and the uncertainty that the future holds. But we know that life always has the upper hand. We plan things and then it just shows up as googly because we're always planning for the future without becoming aware of what is. Just look at the current situation. I'm sure so many of us had so many plans, right? We would do this. We had so many of us had travel plans and this plan and that plan, and you know, ju- everything just got scattered and haywire because uh, you know planning for the future is one thing, but being present to whatever is coming, being aware of and living in the present moment is something totally different. The best way to live is to be engaged with the present moment. Yes, I'm not saying that we should not plan at all. We should need to do that. We need to have our plans and we need to have certain things, but we should not be so engrossed in it that we forget to live in the present moment. And only when we do that is when we can become authentic and overcome and transcend all the fears. It's only when we begin to live in the present and accepting the present moment that that brings us the courage to face whatever that life is showing us. And also, there's no need to completely erase all fears. We only have to distinguish between the real and imaginary fears. Because most of our fears, most of our worries are very, very imaginary. Most of those things might not even happen in the real time. So reflect on the most heated argument probably you had or a fight you had with your child and see what was the fear beneath your reaction. Maybe you'll understand the cause of the outburst and how things would have been different if you had just been present to the present moment minus the fears being attached to it. Now, shift number 4, understanding who your child really, really is. Now, this is a huge one for me, a major one. Understanding that our children are not our children. They come through us, but not from us, right? So I'll just repeat this. Our children are not really our children. They come through us, but not from us. And what's best for our children is to learn how to honor and celebrate them as unique beings. Because, our children are silently prompting us this question all the time. Can you recognize me for who I am? I'm different from, your dreams and expectations from me. And in every day, in a lot of different ways, our children are always inviting us to recognize them for who it is who they really are. And also, our children need to feel that we have trust in their strength. We have trust in them. They need to feel that we believe in their choices and decisions. They need to feel that we love them unconditionally, no matter what. They need to see that, yes, we see them as dynamic, unique, separate, separate individuals who have their own dreams and who have their own strengths and their own characteristics. So we really need here to separate us from them. And just like every creation has a purpose to play in this entire scene of life, it could be a small little ant or it could be the elephant. Each creation has a role to play, and each one is worthy and important in this massive matrix that we are a part of, and we need to understand that. So think about what it would feel like to completely accept your children as not yours. And it's only when we accept this truth can we release our control over them and then we see them for their true worth. Moving on to shift number 5, To be a better parent, we first need to learn to accept and love ourselves. So if we see our children as our teachers, because each time we get angry or reactive, it is actually triggering a wound within us, our own childhood trauma of not being accepted for who it is we are, that our inner child wants us to heal. It could be our unmet needs, our inner vulnerabilities, and our hurts. So it is time to be aware, to get to understand that, as that each time we have a non-acceptance of our kids, whatever it is they do that upsets us or makes us anxious, it is actually a mirror of our non-acceptance of our own self, our own ideation, our own belief systems, and our own life. And our self-acceptance is probably the only path to accept our children as their own individuals with their own rights. And without this awareness, we will always get into a habit of fixing our kids, uh, wherein we are really trying to fix ourselves in reality. So the key to this is self-awareness. It all starts with self-awareness. Uh, can you hear me? Somebody said you can't hear me. Hello. Am I audible? All right. Thank you. Okay. So like I said, that it's all about self-awareness, yeah, and that it is also imperative that we love ourselves first for all that is as we are. When we give ourselves the love that we deserve, because unless we feel the love ourselves, we cannot give love. You cannot be present for your children the way you want to be if you're feeling empty from within. And this reminds me of a very, very profound saying that I once read, that one cannot serve from an empty bowl. Now, to be able to serve, one has to be filled and overflowing with love. So here the bowl is you. And if you are feeling empty from within, you will not be able to do the things that you want to do for your children. So loving the self is very, very important, because one just cannot serve from an empty bowl. And again, here one thing is self-love that can need not be confused with selfless love or selfish love, because there's definitely a difference between the three. Right? So there is selfless love and selfish love and self-love. So what I'm talking about really is self-love and not the other two. So coming to shift number 6, letting the law of cause and effect do its thing. Now, what is the law of cause and effect? It's a law and the most natural way of existence. The universal law of cause and effect states that for every effect, there's a definite cause, and likewise for every cause, there's a definite effect. So if there's an effect, there's a cause, and if there's a cause, there definitely has to be an effect to this. So as parents, we can use this law as a power of natural learning for our kids. Now, let me just explain this a little further. So usually we use punishment to discipline them. And instead of using this strategy as as a way to teach them the right way to behave, we can use this law, which is the power of natural and logical consequences, the natural learning that occurs in life at every instance. If X happens, then Y is definitely going to happen. This is nature's way, and this is life's natural way of teaching us. The cause and effect is one super way to realign their behaviors without you having to yell at your kids or be the strict controller and disciplinarian. For example, if your kids get an A grade in exams, yeah, then the grade itself is an inherent reward for them. The grade A is a natural effect if they've done the lesson well, right? On the other hand, if they get a C on the report card, so instead of, rushing in to scold them and give them a sounding as to how their behavior of not studying on time is what got them the C grade, let the law of natural cause and effect do its job. Because the child who's got the C, there's already a natural consequence in place here. The child already feels a sense of incompetence. He naturally feels a sense of, a little bit of pain, a little bit of regret and remorse. We really don't have to do a thing. So there is this natural law of cause and effect at play. And by just stepping in and trying to fix them, we actually disrupting this natural way of learning. Nature is, in fact, the strongest and the best teacher, and we interrupt the mechanism if we interfere too much into it. And the other point to note here is that as a parent, what we really are looking for is least resistance from our kids. So allow them sometimes to negotiate with you. Kids should be allowed to debate with adults and put forth their point of views also. And this is a great way, when they are with us, when they are with us at home, let the home be the learning ground for them. Let us as parents look at empowering them rather than, overpowering them just because we are the parents. Give them the ownership of their life. When they have a sense of ownership and a say in their own life, they will resist you less. And when they resist you less, they will end up doing more of what you want in the long run. Only in extreme cases where which are called as red flag behaviors, that is where you only don't allow the negotiation to take place. um, for instance, where the child is harming himself or others, or sabotaging themselves through not eating, getting too depressed, anything that goes out of the purview of what's considered normal or average, that is where you need to step in. Uh, the first step, what we do as parents is, get into this mode of denial, because we first have a tendency to deny, no, 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 this cannot be happening. So, getting aware of it, get understand what are red flag behaviors, and then definitely go and seek professional help. So when you see things going to the extreme, don't try to raise the control over your child, because that is what we usually do. We become more strict. We tighten the reins. We put more rules to get them to do things to follow, and this actually has the opposite effect. So when we up the control, the red flag behaviors sometimes can even become even more agitated or even redder. So only in case of extreme behaviors, you release the control completely, seek guidance with compassion with whatever it is that our kids are going through, and go and see a professional here. So these were the six shifts that we spoke about. Now coming to learn understanding about developing some skills. So what are the skills that we need to develop to become a better parent? The first one would be from projection to pause. Now, what is projection to pause? Projection is an automatic, instinctive emotional habit where we put our feelings and thoughts onto others. And we do this in all of our relationships and not just with our children. Yeah, projection is one of the most reflexive emotional habits that humans, especially parents, engage in. And through projection, we create stories out of a simple event that on its own has it really has no meaning. It's like literally making a mountain out of a molehill. For example, if you are anxious about an exam that the child is about to have, do you project your anxiety onto them? Do you make it a big deal? Because what you're really doing here, when you get anxious when the child is to have an exam, you are projecting your anxiety onto them, and then they're naturally going to reflect that, or to mirror you in that way. So our children also know what they feel and understand their own emotions. When we project our own thoughts and emotions, our thoughts onto our children, we are creating the ground for rebel or debate or arguments, because we are always on the lookout on ways to how to design the life of a child. So taking a conscious pause, so instead of projecting your feelings and emotions onto them, taking a conscious pause will give you the space to detach from your own feelings before putting it out onto the others. So take a moment to reflect. What is it that we really need to look inside and see what this reaction is coming from? Is it something that is truly beneficial to the child, or is it something that you're feeling deep within inside you that you need to tackle? Because our children really, they don't want to hurt us. They don't want to disobey us. They don't get pleasure when we get angry with them. They are, when they're doing something that we don't want them to do, they are uh, going against our agenda, but they're not going against themselves. And this is a very important point that we need to understand. So when they are, literally, they don't want to they don't want to hurt us. They don't want to do things on purpose. They don't like it when we get angry. It's just that when they're doing something we don't want them to do. They are not going against themselves. They're just going against us, but not against themselves. So learning to take a powerful pause is very, very important to see, are you really, is it beneficial, the emotion that you're putting onto them. Now, skill number two is moving from expectations to empathy. We have a lot of expectations from our children, and again, most of us expectations of our children are conditioned, by our own agendas that we have of becoming a parent, and also it comes from society, the cultural archetype that we spoke about earlier. And just as we feel imposed and burdened when someone else has a lot of expectations, our children also feel the same when we put a lot of expectations on them. They also feel pressured and they also feel burdened. And the moment we have expectations of our children, they just know it. They know that we want something from them, and that's where they begin to withdraw from us. They begin, just to pull away from us. And the irony of having expectations is the moment you have them, you're also creating a ground of disappointment, because once the expectation is not met, you're not going to be happy yourself, because here you're tying your own source of happiness to an external factor. And anytime we are depending on an external source, we are creating suffering not only for ourselves, but also for the other person, right? And this usually we understand is because there's a mismatch between the expectation and the reality. We expect something, and the reality is something really, really different. And this leads to anger, to frustration, to hurt. Everyone wants the reality or the person outside of them to change. And this isn't really a wise approach, because waiting for the outside circumstances and the outside person to change is really quite futile and a waste of time. And what would really help here actually is releasing the expectations and entering an empathetic engagement instead, to see the truth and reality from their eyes, not from our own agendas. And this frees up a lot of emotional space within us to connect with the children on a more empathetic way, to be more attuned to how it is that to how it is that they are showing up, and also to empower them to be the best versions of themselves. Now, skill number three would be moving from reactions to feelings. Most of us are living in this unconscious reactivity rather than living in a state of conscious responsiveness. And what really this means, see, we are ruled by external stimuli. Yeah? Most of the times we are harried and stressed and running about for our daily chores. And so it is but natural that our children would face the brunt of our frustrations. We yell at them, we order them, we command them around. We're so exhausted some days that our own capacity of responding naturally, we fall short of it. And most of the times we would not be interacting, we just tend to react. We are in a state of reactivity and not interactivity most of the time. Yeah. And this happens because we don't know how to feel our feelings and how to deal with them in an intelligent manner. You might have heard of the term emotional intelligence. So this is what really it is about being present and intelligently dealing with your emotions, so that you're not getting into a state of reactivity, but in a state of interactivity. Uh, this need, or the way to feel your feelings, we're not really taught about it. We don't know how to really deal with our feelings. We get uncomfortable when a feeling shows up, and then we project it onto others. We are told not to get angry, that anger is bad. We are told not to get anxious because anxiety is bad. And then our children learn this from us. We shut ourselves up to emotions. We shut ourselves up to being really present to what it is that we really need to be truly feeling, the emotion. And really feeling an emotion is very different from expressing it. Dealing with feelings is really very simple, just that, we are never really taught how to do it. What we need to do when an emotion comes up or when a feeling comes up, all we need to do is to be really present to it, to allow it to come, to rise, to just let it rise like a wave in our body. Let them get to its height, to its peak. Let it get to its crest, let it totally, engulf you and devour you. Let it have its way with you. Let it, drown you or incinerate you. Let it do its job. And when we've really welcomed it and allowed the emotion to show its true, its strength and to show its full fury, it'll just begin to recede. It'll let it rise, and once you've let it, express itself fully to its highest peak, it'll just like a wave recede and go away. And once we truly let this happen, once we truly feel our feelings, we will no longer need to project it onto the others, onto our children. So being aware of our feelings without expressing it outwards on anyone, that is how we can end the reactivity cycle. That is how we can actually shift the energy from the outer stimuli to our inner awareness. Because when we get angry with our children instead of expressing it, um, what you need to do is sit with the anger for a few moments. For the next time when you get angry with your children, you just sit with the anger for a few minutes, let it come, see what's beneath the anger. Probably it's fatigue that you're feeling, or perhaps it is stress. Just let it, express itself, let it pass, give way to another feeling. And when you do this, when you go through the layers of emotions, you will discover that at the heart of every emotion is peace, is love, is joy, it's freedom. And and that is a wonderful state to be in, because that really is our true essence of every soul. And once we're able to deal with this feeling in a responsive way, we are now better equipped ourselves then to deal with others around us. Now, coming to skill number 4, from being a parent to being a mentor and being a spiritual guide. So, one question that may be coming up for a lot of you now is, what exactly is my role of a parent? Do I just sit back and watch what's happening, or do I step in or step back or leave them to their own devices? Do I have an easy hands off or a hands on approach? Or when do I intervene, if at all I need to, or don't I? Well, we need to detach ourselves from being a parent, to let go of the title of staying in the role of the tag of a mommy and daddy. Let's, just detach ourselves from just being mom and dad, and let's get into the role of being a mentor, that of a guide, someone who has the wisdom to not provide the answer, but instead children be curious, let them explore, let them find their own answers, not within the confines of the shoes and the house and the rules of how societies define it to be, but let them come up with their own expressions, their own answers. And how can we do that? Again, here, nature is the best teacher again. So if we look at the elements of nature, which is earth, air, fire, and water, if we look at the characteristics of each of these, we need to see how nature would balance it out. If there's a fire that's raging, we can put it out using water. And if there's a fire that is going out, air will actually, if you just fan it, it will rise up again. If there's water that is gushing and finding no escape, it makes its own way. The earth will absorb it and let it find its way. So looking at the qualities of each of these elements and how we can take these energies from being just a parent to being a guide and a mentor. So looking at Earth, Earth is very nurturing. It holds, or it gives birth to all forms of life without any discrimination. And the energy of Earth is very, very grounded. It is very rooted. It is very firm. So as a parent, can we be like the Earth? Can we be like a container for our children's diversity, for their very moods, their emotions, even their tantrums, and contain all of their feelings with being grounded ourselves. And the message we send out uh, to them is that no matter how they are, whether they're good, the bad, or ugly, we can be a grounding, we can be a container for all of them. So we need to stand solid, we need to be welcoming and embracing and nurturing, just like the earth is. And now coming to the quality of air. What is air? It's all around us and also in between everything. It is very light, it is very expansive. And this lightness is what our children long for us to embody. The symbol of spaciousness, the air is very spacious. Do we give our children the space they want? Do we give them the privacy and the right to explore? Do we give them the expansiveness of time to develop at their own pace, because we understand that not all children develop at the same rate. Each one has their own pace, their own way of learning and developing. So when we imbibe the spaciousness, the lightness within us, we are giving the children the permission and the space to be themselves. Now, the third element of nature is fire. The fire is quick. It is full of energy. It can ignite change. It can push through the status quo. And when we take on the quality of fire, we too can quickly bring about the change. We can ignite inspiration. We can burn through the old, just like a fire, burns its way through the jungle. And as the fire can destroy, it is also warming. It's also inviting. It is also life-giving. It is the beacon of light, sometimes in a moment of darkness. Anytime that we feel stagnant, we feel the despair, we can get inspired from the element of fire to destroy the old and ignite in its place the change that is so required. And then also there is the element of water. Water symbolizes the ability to flow with the stream of life. And just like the water flows effortlessly, easily, maneuvering through the rocks in its way without getting stuck or blocked by them, and without seeing them as obstacles, we also need to learn to flow around them. We really need to master the art of living. When we absorb the qualities of water, which is always free flowing, always getting attracted to the path of least resistance. Water, as we've seen, it never goes against resistance and gets stuck. It will always find a way to carve a new path. And this is what we as parents need to do. Look for ways to avoid resistance and look for a path of a greater flow. How can I flow with my child rather than break down their resistance? Yeah. So the next time when your child is having this intense emotional moment, you need to think that how nature would best balance it out. And the way nature balances it out is by providing the antidotal or the opposite energy. For example, if your child is having a tantrum, you don't have to mirror that emotion. You don't have to fuel it by your own intensity. You don't throw in an adult tantrum over there, which would actually lead now again to a tsunami of emotions that would become very, very destructive, aggravate and go out of proportion. So instead of that, you provide the opposite energy. So if there's a lot of heat, you need to become the water. Balance out our children's energy. For example, if your child is feeling anxious during the exam time, you certainly don't show your own anxiety. Yeah, that would expand the anxiety. Instead, what you do is you calm them, you give them encouragement, and that is what the antidotal energy is all about. So next time they're having a tantrum and they don't want to do things, you don't, no, you have to do this, have to do this. Provide the antidotal energy over there, because the antidote takes out the sting or the toxicity of the negative behaviors, and it can calm the situation down. Now, coming to skill number 5, from going to a lot of this disciplined way to creating conscious boundaries. Now, when we talk of disciplining, it's about fixing the bad behaviors. That if a child is being bad, you yell at them, you punish them, you do whatever it is required to correct the bad behavior. So we need to correct them, yes, if they are really misbehaving or they're doing things that's way out of the normal. But what is it's not about the intention, but it is the way that it is being executed. The traditional way suggests that we inflict some sort of a pain on our children. We spank or yell at them. We have a timeout corner. We tell them names or we take away something from them uh, because we believe we need to punish them and they will learn through punishment. So this is the old way, and this is again, most of us would want to discipline them in this way, and this really is a way of an adult temper tantrum. So kids throw a tantrum, and then we do the same in the name of discipline. And just because we as parents are more powerful, it doesn't really mean that we have the right to scream and shout and bully them into obeying us. What we what we really need to do here is, you know, um, we need to take a moment to understand where all of this is coming from. We need to look within ourselves and tell us that yes, if you, if we are upset, you don't have a right to shout at them or to beat them or to be very harsh and be unkind to them. You know, we need to work on ourselves first, to be able to understand that where all of this is coming from. There's a way of correcting behaviors, and this is called, it's a discipline of creating boundaries as opposed to the art of disciplining them. We need to create the boundaries in a way that we ourselves would follow it, right? So boundaries really begin with parents, and parents can be co-creators of the children's reality. So we need to set boundaries that we ourselves uh, practice in our lives. We have to have these boundaries, and then the children will automatically learn and absorb it from us. Yeah. For example, if your kid is eating a lot of chocolate, then instead of shouting at them for eating a lot of chocolates and cookies, what we need to do is create the environment. Don't keep the chocolates in the house because they're kids. They are bound to do things that will give them the joy. So what we need to do is control the environment and not really them. You know, be the co-creator of the environment for them, right? So we need to create boundaries which are healthy for them and for us. And then coming to the last one is the control to the connection. We all love our children. Yeah, it could be, the priest or the prostitute or a business maverick or a drug peddler. We all love our children and wish to connect with the kids. The connection doesn't happen with our intention. It's more energetic. It is also vibrational. It's very, very non-verbal. And true connection emerges from one place. It's our connection to our own self. And it will happen when you begin to realize how your inner reality gets projected onto them and creates an outer reality and affects your connection with them. So if we don't feel whole, if we are separate and fighting our own selves, then our kids pick up this, the gaping void in us, and that is what they will absorb, and that is what they will manifest in their own life. So connection also is a learned skill. When we learn to connect with our own selves at the deepest level, when we become aware of our fears, our own hurt, our own resentments, that is when, we will teach our children to connect with their inner self. And once they learn to connect with their inner self, it will automatically lead to an outer connectivity too. So just allowing them naturally to, ask them open-ended questions, invite them to share what is going on with their inner world. Be patient with them, listen to them, honor them as unique individuals. And that is what's going to create the inner connectivity, which will lead to the outer connection. So just, kind of summing it up very quickly, parenting is more about you. And when you learn to be attuned to your own self, that is when you will be present and show up for them in the most authentic way. It is a long, arduous process. It is natural to feel normal, to feel overwhelmed. But it's not about a journey about perfection. It's about just becoming, working on yourself first, transforming yourself first. It's only when you work on yourself will you be able to show up for your kids in a way that they want you to, right? So thank you for letting me share this with you. And if you have any questions, let me know, please. Okay, I have one question. No. Are there any questions? So I think we're running out of time, so I didn't want to go, um, all right. So I don't think there are any questions so far. But again, at the same time, if you do have one, we don't have time to touch upon the subconscious part that I wanted to touch upon. I think we've reached the limit. But you can go through my website. You will find it over there. It's www.changewithrene.com. It's Change with Rene, CHANGEWITHRENAE, changewithrene.com. I can type it here if you want. Also, you can mail me your questions if you have any, and I'll be more than happy to answer it for you. Yeah, I have just typed here the website where you can go and have a look, and also the email address where you can write to me. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So thank you once again to Armin and ItsHerWay.com for letting me come and speak on this topic of parenting. I hope you have got some pointers at least as to how you need to be present to your kids in a more conscious way. And do let me know if you have any questions or any other things. I also do hypnotherapy. I do image management. I do energy healing. So if there's anything that you need to know about those topics, do let me know and I'll be happy to share. Yes, Ruchika. Okay, I do see a question here. Do you have a Facebook or Instagram page? Right. Instagram page is also, Facebook page is Change with Renee. And Instagram page is Shagufta_Renee. So I'm typing it out here. It's Shagufta_Renee, which is the Instagram, and Facebook page is Change with Renee. Do I have one-on-one sessions? Yes, I do. I also do the sleep talk process for kids, which is the unconscious, subconscious way of working with them, programming them, the minds in the right way. So what we spoke about today was all about the conscious way of parenting. But the sleep talk process is what I teach the parents of what they need to do when the child is asleep. So you are working on the subconscious mind where you're putting in or you're setting in the right programs. You are developing the confidence. You are setting in, developing a firewall in their minds so that they are able to resist all the negatives in their whatever life is throwing to them. So yes, you can find all this information on the website. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Dipti. I'm glad you liked it. If there's anything that you need to know, just let me know. Yes, you can also find the service on itsaskill.com. Is there anything else? Armin, can we end this? Hello?
Yeah, Shagufta, we can end.
All right. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here. And thank you, Armin. And thanks to ItsHerWay.com. Bye-bye. Bye. Take care.